Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we will dive into a very exciting topic, Avoid the AI Black Hole, How Training Leaders Can Finally Show ROI on AI Investments. This session is eligible for HRCI, SHRM, and ATD Professional Development credits. Now let's meet today's speakers. We have Michael Rochelle, the CSO and Principal Analyst at Brennan Hall Group, John Peebles, the CEO at Administrate, and John Bowman, Senior Manager Training Systems at Fortune 500 Training Services Company. A huge thank you to today's webinar sponsor, Administrate. Administrate is a training management system built for enterprise training. Their platform automates the most complex parts of training, allowing teams to focus on meaningful strategic work. Please be sure to visit them at www.getadministrate.com. Now, before we dive into today's content, let me tell you about Brennan Hall Group and some incredible opportunities that could accelerate your career. Brennan Hall Group is a leading professional development firm that has been serving learning, talent, and HR executives worldwide for more than 30 years. We've advanced the growth and performance of millions of employees and leaders through our cloud-based platform, delivering evidence-based research, data, and certification programs that empower organizations to achieve excellence in every area of human capital management. Our impact spans more than 10 million employees and executives globally, supported by a comprehensive research library, strategic insights, and prestigious awards program. Below is a sample of the organizations we are proud to partner with. We have incredible learning and networking opportunities, our two BRIC events happening this year, our AI Summit on October 15th, and our Leadership Summit on November 17th and 18th. And don't forget to save the date for next year's 2027 HCM Excellence Conference happening January 26th through the 28th. All details for everything I've mentioned will be available in a PDF you'll receive within 24 hours after the webinar. Now, based off everything I just went over, I would like to know what you would like to learn more about. Is it our Eminence program, maybe our 2027 HCM Excellence Conference, one of our BRIC events, or our awards program? I will leave this up for a few more seconds. Thank you. All right. Now, one last thing, we are excited to share that at the end of today's webinar, we will be selecting one lucky raffle winner to win a complimentary Excellence in Action submission. Stay tuned to see if you're the lucky winner. You must be present to win. Now, if you have any questions during the webinar, please use the questions panel in your control bar. We'll be answering them throughout the session. We're also recording today's webinar, and you'll receive an email within 24 hours with a link to the recording and a PDF of the slides. The chat box is open, so feel free to share your thoughts as we go along. Your input makes this more valuable for everyone. Now I would like to pass things off to Michael.
Well, hi everyone. Michael Rochelle, Chief Strategy Officer and Principal Analyst here at the Brandon Hall Group. For the folks that are domestic, I hope you had a wonderful long holiday weekend. I hope you had better weather than I did in Boston. But for folks that are out there, thank you and welcome. I'm really excited about having John and John on, experts in the field. I think this is going to be a really cool conversation. We're kicking off a poll here, but I want to encourage people to ask questions in the chat. We'll be posing some questions to you. So let's talk about our first one. Let's help each other out in our journey in learning and development, and let's all weigh in on which phase does that best match for learning and development journey? Which one of these would you put yourself right now as far as you look forward, as you look behind, as you look where you are now, what does your journey look like? And where would you place that phase in terms of learning and development? Okay. Well, as predicted, our research shows that 61% of organizations fall into the strategic and optimized, and it looks like this audience is definitely on track with that. Nice to see that people not stuck in that reactive, high stress, ad hoc mode, but are well on their way to really achieving the business and performance results that you're looking for. So thanks for sharing all of that. For John and John, shouldn't be a surprise, I would hope.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think we're sort of past the point of panic with this stuff, and people are starting to hit their stride a little bit. Um, for our organization, I think we have a lot of variation among different people within our team and their sort of comfort level with AI and kind of where we're going with it from a learning and development perspective. But certainly we've started to make strides in that direction. I think we're kind of making some progress.
Okay, so let's kind of jump into what we want to cover today. And I'm just going to share a quick but important piece of research. Of all the things that we look at when it comes down to AI, the piece that we see that's getting the most amount of pressure put on it now is not just the use of AI, but also it's been out there for a while. People are getting involved with it, and now organizations are asking, so what is the ROI from their AI investments? What are they getting out of it, particularly in learning and development? Content creation's been out there. We're going to be talking about something very special, which is optimizing training budgets, but it's been there for a period of time. And so now organizations are really being asked. And it's encouraging. I mean, it's almost one out of two. Um, but we have to look at this as we need 100% of folks to be clear on whether they can discern the clear ROI for AI. Without that, it's going to be difficult to justify advancing investments, bringing on technology platforms, upskilling and reskilling people to put them in a better position to use AI. So this is kind of a major subset of this overall conversation is how can you optimize the return on investment for AI in terms of helping with learning and development, particularly managing training. And for John and John, when you see this, you're out there a lot working with organizations. Do you find that they're struggling with this question now?
Yeah, I can speak to that maybe first. It kind of, we were just talking earlier how I don't have kids, right? So I don't tell stories about my kids. I tell stories about other people's kids. And it reminds me of a good friend of mine. And he had three daughters. And first one, grows up, goes to high school, graduates from college, gets her degree, meets the love of her life, gets married, gets her first job. And she's working away for a few months and everything's going great. And she calls home and he's like, what's going on? And she's like, well, like, is this it? Like, this is it? This is the rest of my life. It's like all these big milestones have been passed. And I think that often that is sort of the reaction that people find themselves, at least in a work setting, when they're engaging with some of the aspects of AI, at least as they've been exposed to, because you go through and you play around, you generate your PowerPoint, and there's weird text on some of the slides, and you save some time here and there, and it drafts some email responses, and you play around with all these things, and after that, you're kind of like, is this it? Is this how what is left here? What can we actually do to move the needle on the big goals that we have for our team and for the company? And so I think that's the question that I get asked probably the most. And it's like, how do you move through these gates? And there are some clear gates that are barriers in many cases to organizations and to teams and so forth. And it's not like I've got all the answers or whatever, but I think I'm excited to talk today and with people about just strategies that we've seen that work well and can hopefully get you onto the path that you're now crossing that real chasm, I think, that separates folks that have cracked this in a way that is meaningful to the bottom line and to their goals versus those who haven't.
Yeah, that's a great point, John. I think we're sort of in the Gartner trough of disillusionment now with AI. We had the big initial hype up front, and then people started, that we had some power users that were kind of early adopters that were hitting the ground running and doing the stuff, and then now it's become more democratized to larger groups of people. And I think the average person struggles to find meaningful benefit from the basic chat-based LLM AI that everyone has access to. I think the when you look at what people are able to do to augment their work, with AI and sort of the fear of AI replacing people's jobs, it's hard to connect those two thoughts. Like we're just not there yet, not even close. So being able to kind of separate ourselves from the disappointing experience of using a basic chatbot to write emails, create PowerPoints, the stuff you mentioned, where the results are pretty mixed, to building something that's pinpoint use case targeted, purpose built, based on rigorous data and analysis that does one thing really well. I think we're sort of at that point where people are hungry for that next capability, and a lot of people aren't sure how to take that step. So that's kind of where I see the industry right now.
Both excellent points, and it'll be interesting as we kind of unravel all of this. There's safe plays and at-risk plays with AI, and what we'll be talking about today is we definitely have to get a handle somehow around large-scale costs invested in our training operations and how we're rolling things out. So hopefully this will come across as a safe play for AI and not be in that trough of disillusionment that you brought up, John. So good point. Okay, let's continue our journey. So I'm going to put this out to both of you. So there's some points that we often think about, and the first one is data and integration. And what we're all trying to guard against is we've always been concerned about the garbage in, garbage out approach to data analysis, and now this just gets amplified by tenfold probably with introducing AI automation and escalates this rapidly. And also, as we've all learned with AI, it's definitely a pleaser type of software. It wants to go out of its way to make sure that it got it right with you to the point of potentially saying, well, what's the definition of right? It'd be really great for both of you to just kind of talk about making sure that we can get AI to do the right thing. And also, in particular, as we're trying to make big decisions about our training investments, how all of this data can work for us rather than against us. So I'll open up to you two to give us your thoughts on that.
I think
You go ahead, John.
John should go first.
Okay.
Yeah. On John, yeah.
So I think your point, Michael, about AI kind of going off the rails really easily is good. And what we found is helpful is to not get too ambitious too soon with AI. And we've really spent a lot of time and energy in introducing structure and rigor to our data set so that we know we can rely upon it from an integrity perspective when it comes to things like reporting and numbers and like the stuff that matters, right? If we're tracking revenue, it's like how we know that the revenue number is right. So getting that data in place first is key. Like without that, that's the garbage part. We don't want the garbage to go in. So if we can get the garbage out first, that's great. Even then, once you have a clean data set, AI is prone to hallucinations, to taking the wrong, sometimes it's like an intern that has been in the job for 2 days and you give them one task and they come back and here's the thing. It's like, where did this come from? This isn't at all what I was asking you to do. So what we found is successful is to start very small with our AI use cases and just say, like, we're just going to take this very narrow pinpoint thing that we want to do, and we're just going to evaluate, is this A or B? Is it just a binary decision? It's this or this. Take a look at this data set, whatever it is. Maybe it's a list of courses, and we're just sorting them into basket A and basket B. Work through that. Build out your agent to think through those use cases. And find where it breaks down. It will break down even on the most simple things. And so I think, before you get ambitious about where you want to land in 6 months or a year, it's just building those little it's almost like a little microservice of an agent for, the one little use case. And then after a while, maybe you have another little use case that you can build and have an agent that does that thing. And then pretty soon you sort of build a network or a mesh of agents that can rely upon each other to each do the thing that they're good at. Now, are we experts at this? I would not say so. I mean, we're dabbling, we're trying this stuff out. It's hard to, I think, for anyone to say that they're an expert in this at this point in time. But that's what we found successful is, really just finding those very small things, stitching them together in a way that's reliable, and then sort of backing away and comparing that output to something that we know is a known good state. Like, we have a human process that we do over here, and we're going to compare A to B, and did it do the right things? Oh, nope, it didn't. It missed these things over here. So that's sort of where we are in our iteration of this. We're not AI led today by any means. I think we're sort of strapping the training wheels onto the bike here with AI, and we're going to see how much better we can get.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, my thoughts on this is, I've got a computer science degree, and this garbage in, garbage out thing is one of the things I think I learned in the fifth grade when it's like, what is a computer? Back in the early 90s. And I, we've known this for ever, and yet I've never seen it reinforced more than when I started playing around with the data that was being fed into various AI tools and toolkits. And, it's even things like, do you have clean data? Do you have the right ratio of data in order to answer questions and meaningfully about the whatever problem you're trying to solve? And so I think that point about take a known situation, a known problem domain where you can relatively quickly validate whether this is right or wrong will help you backport the tuning that you need to the data and make sure that it's structured in the right way. So that's kind of, I think, thing number one that has become really clear as we build our product at Administrate, but also as we deal with getting and aligning our data internally for our own company. I think the second really important thing is I encourage folks to play as much as possible with these things and as aggressively as possible, because until you're actually running the kind of feedback loop on whatever it is you're trying to engage with, you're not going to really get a feel for the situation. And so sometimes folks, rightly so, I see a little bit of chat going on about, needing IT to help out with these projects, and I couldn't agree more. And, John Bowman works at a company far bigger than Administrate, and he's got processes and things that he needs to follow that are way more involved than what we do in a much smaller company. And so sometimes one of the things that we've been talking about a lot with customers is, okay, well, maybe there's a process that in steps that need to be gone through at work. Find something in your personal life that is similar to your work that you can play around with. And so, some of the early research for the operational kind of chatbot that we have started rolling out at Administrate was founded on me playing around trying to automate a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, right? And this is totally dorky, and I don't know, maybe if you want to identify yourself in the comments, you can totally say, whether you play Dungeons and Dragons. My girlfriend says it's cool now. I'm not so sure I'd go that far, but anyway. And it was this idea, right, where I had to load in all this data about my world and my campaign, my players, and so forth. And this is a known entity, right? Like, I knew we had never been to that mountain before, and yet hallucinations would start. And a lot of that was because of bad data that I put in, or I loaded up too much generic world content and not enough of our campaign. And so you start to get this feel. And, we've had numerous examples of this where team members are solving some personal hobby problem, or we have a colleague that's trying to find the right school for his son to go play baseball at, and so it's analyzing all these rosters all across the country. Just find something that you can get excited about and you don't mind iterating with, and that you can play with, and then translate it out into work. And I think you'll find that you make a lot more progress, you'll have a lot more confidence, and you'll have that feel of how to steer towards ROI because you'll know, hey, this saved me half my time when I was messing around with Dungeons and Dragons. Therefore, we should at least be able to get the same kind of impact at work. So those are the kind of two things I would maybe add a little bit.
Yeah, and if I can just camp onto that too a little bit about ROI, I think one of the things that we've learned in our kind of automation AI journey is the sooner you can define sort of the unit benefit of whatever automation or AI process you're putting in place, the quicker you can document the ROI. So if you have, like these little micro agents running around or automations or whatever, if you can say, well, this every time this fires, it saves me 2.5 minutes. Well, then you just do the math, and it's like this one and this one and this one, and it all adds up to a one person headcount or whatever it is. But it becomes easier if you build that into your creation process of any AI enabled or automated process. It's like before we deploy this, we're going to define exactly what it's saving us so that number one, justify your own existence, right, to your leadership team. And number two, it kind of writes itself then as an ROI report.
All excellent points, and I think we're creating some good interaction with folks out in the audience, and we're going to further that interaction by launching another poll question. So just to kind of keep drilling in on the AI investment and ROI, been asking folks in the chat as well. But when you look at your own organization, do you think your organization can clearly demonstrate ROI from AI investments, learning and development? And if there are folks out there that haven't reached that point yet because they haven't implemented AI, you can just throw it in the chat as we're not there yet, but let's see what everybody has to say. I would probably say to John and John, this is not atypical results, kind of the middle group being sort of kind of, and then a good percentage of people still trying to work their way through it. Uh, when you see an audience like this have this kind of breakout, I'd love to ask the audience, what are some of the blockers, for the people that are in the know impartially? Are there challenges or blockers to being able to do this? And I'm going to pose the same question to our experts, John and John. When you look at organizations trying to figure this all out and you see the partials and the notes, what are some of the major blockers or challenges that are holding people back from being able to attain a discernible ROI from their AI investments?
So maybe I can jump in real quickly. I think the good news is the primary blockers that we see that prevent people from being able to adopt AI were the same blockers that prevented organizations from being very efficient or run very smoothly. And so by that, I mean, again, back to the data, if you can have your stuff at least in a computer, that obviously helps a lot. You wouldn't believe how many of our customers that are really sophisticated teams and organizations, whatever, would have a lot of stuff on whiteboards and in drawers and spreadsheets, or even if it was in spreadsheets, it'd be different spreadsheets per region all over the place. And that just breeds inefficiency and errors and people working way too hard to get way too little value out. So that's kind of one area. And then I think the second area is disconnected or non-integrated systems. And again, it's a data problem, it's a visibility problem. And if a human can't answer with some amount of hard work a question, an AI is not going to be able to do much better. So I going back to those gates that I mentioned earlier, I think it's the same gates. It's just a different lens, really. And so I think the good news is you can solve both at the same time with the right strategy. So
Yeah, I agree, can't agree more with everything you just said. And I would also say for somebody at a very large company like ourselves, in a lot of cases, it's hard to even know what that investment is. Like when you're trying to show a return on investment, one of the factors of that is like how much money did we spend? Well, we don't necessarily know that information. We're part of some gigantic enterprise deployment of multiple AI tools. We don't know what slice of that is dedicated to the things that we're doing in learning and development. So, I think part of that is just getting a handle on what are we really talking about here, and then if we can get an idea of what that investment was, then we can start to say, okay, let's try to show how we're like covering that investment or hopefully building upon that with additional value. I think, we're sort of at the point where I think people are maybe getting better at measuring ROI, but I don't think we're at the point as a larger industry where there is an ROI. Like we might have a handle on it, but I'm not sure we've gotten to the point where we can say like, oh yeah, we've made back our money from the AI investment. It's still too new, too kind of fledgling in a lot of cases. And yeah, so I think John, your points are all good there. It's like it, getting yourself into a situation where you have the data organized in a way that a person could answer it easily, and just speeding that up with AI is kind of the first step in a lot of cases to be able to actually realize the benefit.
So let's keep our discussion going. Let's go into another major area. And again, I'm going to throw out something for you. And this is, we're talking about data analysis becoming more reliable. AI can be more deterministic, but you can get your staff on board with it. There was a great point that Miriam brought up, is that adopting AI and getting discernible results from AI are two different things. So there is a paradox with investment. You want to add more tech, you want to get into this greater level of data analysis with AI, but you also have to kind of integrate everything and create this single source of truth. I'm going to turn it over to John and John to kind of weigh in on how do we make this all happen correctly? What are the potential pitfalls? What are the things that we need to steer clear of?
Well, I can start having been through this process in the last 5 years of taking uh, multiple whiteboards of data, spreadsheets, all the things that you can imagine, multiple different tools that were not purpose built for training at all, and consolidating them into one single source of truth that now forms the backbone of our training business. It's extremely painful to go from disparate data sources all over the place to one single monolithic relational database. Um, it's worth it. It's super worth it. Even before AI, I would say it's worth it because it allows you to operate in a much cleaner and more purposeful way than you can when it's just a bunch of people who have their little fiefdoms of their spreadsheets. And this is my spreadsheet and that's your spreadsheet, and I'm going to do this thing and you're going to do that thing, and maybe we'll talk to each other. To everything's in one place, and we have a kind of a data set that we can rely on for all of the different purposes. And part of what drives the kind of uh, diffuse, proliferation of data is all these edge cases that we have. Well, we need a different, to whoever's point that was, we need a different spreadsheet for this region because they have this factor that we don't have in this other region. So we're going to create two separate spreadsheets because we don't know how else to deal with it. So when you start trying to bring that data together, it can be really pretty awful to try to like merge all of your disparate data sources into one thing. But I would say that it's 100% worth it. It's worth the pain because then you have reporting that you can rely on. You have AI that can be enabled. You have automations that can take place. It's a necessary evil, but to kind of allow yourself to scale in a way that's not mind-numbingly painful. It's necessary.
Yeah, I think just to riff off this a little bit too, we're kind of obsessed at Administrate with the idea that we don't care about content authoring or, art or, any of that stuff. We care about operations, and we care about helping our customers be as efficient as possible and so forth. And so it's really like a rubber meets the road arena that we're playing in. It's scheduling and conflicts and calendars and planning and all this stuff. And so when you think about, well, how do we apply and artificial intelligence in that area, we kind of think that the metaphor is around the benefits that you can get with using AI to code. I don't know how many folks that are on here have used AI to help with any programming, but the thing that I love about it is it'll put out a bunch of code of varying quality, right? But you can do this wonderful thing, which is you can execute the code and see the answer and see the result. And so there's this bullet point here about deterministic data set to use, and that's really, really important. But I also think that if you can get the mental model that you use to think of these tools, these LLMs, kind of like droids in Star Wars. They're slightly less intelligent in many ways. They're very good at some things. They're kind of funny at times. They make stupid mistakes. This is kind of what you're dealing with. And so the more that you can focus down on problems that are, we want to make a decision and there's a set series of outcomes that this decision can fall into. I think that you can then verify that is the way to approach this, right? And also it's kind of, when you think about, like, humans are really good at a lot of stuff, but the problem is we get tired, we need to eat food, we want to sleep, we can't go 100% all the time. We're not as fast as some of these models and so forth. And so again, if there's like those pieces of work that you're saying, man, this is just takes us way too long. It's a process that we know and we know works, but we would like to speed it up and have it go all night and always be checking. That's one of the things that we have had great success with at Administrate, is just these little kind of spinning problem seekers that we can define on behalf of our customers, and then it's just it pops up at any time and says, hey, this instructor's got a conflict with this class coming up in 2 weeks or tomorrow, or whatever. That type of thing, it's pretty easy to validate. You can go and check their calendar, or ask the instructor or whatever. It's really, really important. It's very boring, laborious, long-winded work, and it's like these great candidates to be like, hey, we can now do 2, 3, 4 times as much training, and we don't have to go out and hire a bunch more people. So that thinking of, like, how do we glue together these well-defined processes and these deterministic outcomes and basically supercharge existing efficiencies is, I think, what we find really exciting about kind of the future.
It's an interesting point you're bringing up, John, too, because I think just by your explanation, by default, you gave a perfect ROI use case to maximize investment. AI, very expensive trainer or a group of trainers, you're heading headlong into a particular conflict, or there's going to be challenges. The cost of not getting that training done or having to create unforeseen delays or rescheduling, that's tremendously expensive to an organization. And with your technology, they can see it coming. They can get in front of it before they run the red light. So that's a terrific example.
Yeah, I'm thinking of one customer in particular. They actually would measure the emotional cost of these things,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Because
sure.
it's like, great, everybody gets there on time and disasters averted, but everybody's stressed out, because it's now they have to take a red eye and it's a crappier hotel because it wasn't booked in advance. And and I thought that was a very
Mhm.
interesting way. And I think there are plenty of ways to crack that ROI, nut as well. It doesn't just
Yeah,
have to be money all the time.
yeah, exactly.
One of the things I kind of preach to my team about when we look at what should be automated is this idea of high urgency, low value work. If it's the kind of thing that, like, a monkey just has to watch the inbox until something happens, and then, like, they go click the button over here, that has zero human value. Like, that poor person is sitting there, heart racing, waiting for the thing to happen, and, oh, okay, now it happened, I'm going to go do the thing. That's a perfect use case for AI and automation. And the converse is true too. I think, as you're looking at what should be automated and what shouldn't, um, there's a little bit of a tendency to try to automate away anything that can be done by a machine. And I think there are some real job satisfaction factors that go along with that. If you take away all of someone's kind of mechanistic work and you put them into just a like use your brain at 110% all day long, thinking through thorny problems and making decisions and like doing things only a human can do, that's its own of kind of job satisfaction problem because it can lead to burnout. You know, if you sit down at your desk and immediately you're confronted with giant thorny problems and it just continues for 8 hours, that's exhausting in its own way. So I think there needs to be a balance between, you know, what are the things that truly make sense that are, like I said, those high urgency, low value tasks that make sense to automate versus like, you know, at some point someone's going to need like a little bit of a mental break. And sometimes it's good just to like, you know, file the papers in the bins or like whatever it is that needs to be done just to kind of give yourself a mental palate cleanser. So I think that needs to be factored into kind of the overall methodology, just to kind of think through what humans need as workers.
I could not agree more. In fact, we that's like a standard part of our sales pitch, not to sell people right now, but it's like this idea of like super extremely high value, but low satisfaction work, or it's just stuff that you don't want to be doing, like monitoring inbox for problems or whatever. That it's just like it's just terrible. And also, I live over here in Scotland. I'm here today, and it's a beautiful day outside, which people always ask about the weather. It's a conspiracy by Scots, by the way, to keep Americans from moving over here because we actually have pretty great weather in Edinburgh. But I travel a lot. I'm on a plane a lot, and so often, I'll miss things. I'll miss the football match or whatever, and people will be like, "Oh, well, now with AI, you probably don't have to travel quite as much to see customers and prospects and so forth." And I'm like, no, like that's one of the best parts of my job, right? We want to get rid of the other stuff that can, like calendar rescheduling, all this stuff, but visiting folks and understanding their problems and sitting down with whiteboards and all that, that's really meaningful. That's high satisfaction for me. That's how we can be a good partner to customers like John and really understand what the environment is. So like the more that you can amp up that human to human interaction. And it also just gives you, that, like John's talking about filing papers or whatever. I'm just can't tell you how many good ideas I've had just traveling to a customer location, right? Because you're just sitting there and you're kind of, you're it's a little bit bored sometimes. You're thinking about the meeting that you just had or the one that's coming up, and your brain is just allowed to drift a little bit. I think that's very valuable.
Okay, let's throw in another poll. So now we're trying to get into your instructor-led training data, like kind of drill in on how do you have it set up within your organization? So how structured and centralized is your ILT training data? Okay, let's take a look at the results. Not surprising again, you've got almost 9 out of 10 folks saying there's a lot of work to be done in getting that structured and centralized. But I think that's the point, John, that you're trying to make. It's not, and I think Anita said it too, like you got this thorny road that you have to travel. It's not that people aren't trying hard, right, or trying to figure this all out. It's just the nature of the data itself. It's difficult to get it structured and centralized, particularly without a technology helping you to corral it all, right?
Well, that's kind of just the thing. Yeah, and not to just shamelessly plug Administrate here, but like they have the understanding of the data structure that's needed to get everything organized. So like that's half the battle, I think, is just understanding like where am I going to put all this stuff? What am I supposed to do with this data that's in all these spreadsheets and stuff? And so if you have somebody that understands the way the data needs to be structured, and you can kind of start from there and fill in the data that needs to be filled in, and it makes you ask questions of yourself and your team members, and kind of try to get to the bottom of business decisions that maybe you've been putting off for the last 5 years, or kind of things that you haven't had to confront because you've had these workarounds. It can be really powerful to sit down and take the time and actually sort through things and put it in a single source of truth that's one system.
Good point. Okay, let's jump into another discussion element. Is the automations themselves. So we've got the data model. Let's assume that we're doing a good job with that data modeling and we're fostering integrations. We got to get this built easy to use, be able to work with it, and then ultimately, right, get instant results and be able to start making some great decisions and kind of automate this whole process so it happens seamlessly. So part of this, don't you think, is the essence to unlocking the true value of AI's potential, right? Getting this all aligned and getting this all working right. This really could drive the single biggest ROI for the AI investments, getting this right, don't you think?
Yeah, I'll never forget. This is about 5 years ago. We were visiting a company, and everybody can figure it out, but I just won't name their name. But they're big in the movie production software space and big in the audio space, recording software. And you go visit their headquarters, and it's super cool, particularly for like a mostly, well, maybe an entirely failed musician like myself, which is they just have this long, dark hallway. That's all the Grammy and Oscar awards that they've won for technical excellence with their software and whatnot. I remember we had this great meeting, but at the end of it, the guy was like, I was just kind of disappointed that you didn't really have much capability to do automation and workflow, right? And I was like, what do you mean? We've got this API. And I said, yeah, but then I have to do something, and it's hard to get a server here, and whatever. And I've got to program some stuff and whatever. And I was like, okay. So this like stuck in my brain for quite some time. And as we built out more and more integrations with different products, you'd constantly get these questions of like, hey, can I do this slight nuance to this workflow that's mostly standard, but we want to do something slightly different or whatever. And so by basically we finally solved this problem about a year and a half, 2 years, I don't remember, a year and a half ago, where we white labeled in a workflow engine that could leverage all the API investments we made in our product. And John became our favorite customer at the time because you just went wild with this, and your team went, I think you're the first beta tester, one of the first, and then it just went nuts on the automation potential. And it was really something to see. So I don't know if you could elaborate on your journey, John, but we find it really inspiring and a really great example of the power that you can leverage with this stuff once it's all hooked up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we really started with the Administrate automation engine, looking at kind of what are the things we hate about our lives right now and wish that we could, automate away. And boy, we had some ideas. They just came out of the woodwork. Like we had a kind of a kickoff meeting and sort of did a little bit of introduction to art of the possible. I think I had like close to 50 ideas within a couple days from the team. So that was number one, really awesome, and number two, horribly frightening. So we just started cranking through and building stuff. And like I said, we started with kind of the lowest hanging fruit, which is really what takes the longest and is the worst from like a human satisfaction perspective. What do we just hate doing, or what are we bad at? Where do we have a lot of human error? We sort of started there, and what do we think is going to be the simplest to build? Because frankly, we didn't know what we were doing with the automator tool, because we were just starting from scratch. So when we sort of figured out how it worked, did some kind of proof of concept use cases, discovered that it actually is really easy, and just got to work on automating all kinds of stuff. And so now we're sort of at a point where it's sort of like if you can dream it, we can build it. We have a lot of ideas coming from all of our teams on a weekly basis, and there's now a backlog of, I want to say, 30 to 40 automation ideas that we just haven't built yet. But we probably have over 100 workflows at this point that we've automated with this tool. So how does that relate to AI? Well, in some ways it doesn't. It's a non-AI first kind of tool, but it has connectors into AI. So you can take the workflows and the data that you create and funnel them into AI engine, or you can do some of the things that we do, which is you can take that data and you can post it in a central repository where then we've got our enterprise copilot subscription, and we can just write agents on there that go deal with the data that we've posted out there to look at. So there's a lot of cool AI use cases that we're just getting our feet wet with. One of them is as an example is like a course bot, essentially. Like, if we have a catalog of 400 courses, we're not good at knowing what's in there. Our sales team isn't good at knowing what's in there, or exactly which course meets which kind of technical requirements or career advancement opportunities. It's just too much data. But we have the data, and it's structured and organized. And so that's a great use case for an AI agent. So we can say, hey, I have a customer that wants to skill up in this area. They're looking at maybe moving into this role in the future. What do you recommend from the catalog? And it just spits out, well, here it is, and here's the price, and here's all the data that you might need to talk to the customer about it. So that's just kind of one narrow use case of, because we have all of our data in this monolithic structured format, we can then leverage that with AI. So we have several other AI use cases on the horizon that we're looking at to basically interact with that structured data. And I just want to reiterate, the data structure itself is really, really important. AI will choke very quickly, especially if you have large volumes of data, if it's not organized in a really meaningful way. And so what we found is the most successful is to use Markdown language in a JSON format. And it's pretty good at parsing through that and figuring out the salient information for whatever use case we're building.
Thanks, John. Okay, let's throw out another question. If you are working with AI and learning systems, tell us what you think best describes the quality of the data that you're using right now. We've talked a lot about how important it is to get data right. Where does everyone fall in terms of that data journey? Okay, let's take a look at the results. Pretty evenly split. So folks are kind of across the board. I would probably say to John and John that usually it's on the lower end, not due to lack of effort, but just it's not a core competency for a lot of us out there in learning and development is to work with data collection, scrubbing, QCing, stratification, building data lakes. So that's probably not really a surprise. So let's get into our discussion around that and talk about the examples of automation and operational AI and how we can get this all to work right. So I'll throw it back to John and John on that.
Yeah, and Michael, I think one of the very good reasons why it hasn't been a core competency over the last 15, 20 years is because a lot of L&D teams, due to the nature of their very heavy e-learning kind of focus, have operated like radio stations, right? And it's we're going to broadcast this feed out, and people are going to consume it, and they'll tune in and they'll tune out, and they're in a broadcast mode, right? And so the feedback from students and so forth has always been somewhat limited or difficult to crack. When you're thinking about ILT, you're in a much different arena, right? There's just this huge amount of feedback and data points that you need to assimilate before you can even make a decent decision, right? We're trying to get real people to a real spot at a real time, and there's a lot of money that is involved doing that. So I don't think it's not a failure if you don't have that cracked. It just needs to be, this is what we mean when we talk about there's a black hole that is, AI cannot even escape from if you don't have the data and the systems arranged. And just back to kind of the 100+ workflows that John was talking about, I think it's important to point out, like, you're not a classically trained programmer, I'm pretty sure, right, John? And yeah, and And this is a drag and drop interface that you can connect up to various systems in standardized ways. And it's just wild to see people take off. And now it can get even super meta because now you can even ask the AI to help you build out a workflow within this thing. And so what could possibly go wrong with that? But yeah, it's
There you
been
go.
really, really nice to see. I don't know either. We've talked about automation in the past, John, that you're like, yeah, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars here, or $1 million there. Like it's some really hard numbers put against this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we've been able to quantify certainly multiple headcount of savings from automation in general, which is really nice to see, and it's enabled us to scale in a way that we wouldn't have been able to scale without adding people. So I mean, that's the biggest benefit for sure. I would say, on the kind of the point about making decisions with AI, back to the poll. I think what we've discovered is we're not at the point yet where we're willing or comfortable to have AI make decisions on our behalf. It's kind of how I feel about having AI write on my behalf. I don't like it. Like, no, I want to talk for myself. So the same thing is true of our decision-making process. But what it's really good at is bubbling up the information in a way that's digestible and easily acted upon by a human. So I think, taking it just one step down from maybe where we'll end up in the future and just saying, okay, now we're just going to identify the fact that we need to make a decision, gather the information that's required and present it to the human so they can make a quick and intelligent decision based on the information. That's kind of where we're aiming right now. And maybe in the future, we'll be using AI to make decisions, but that's not quite in our wheelhouse yet.
I think that's such an important point. Like just knowing that you might need to make a decision is half the battle, right? Or hey, look at this. Something seems fishy. We see so much value just by being able to turn something like that on, and it's one of the key things that we're looking to address with some of the things that we're building out now. So you don't have to close the loop. It goes back to what you were saying at the beginning, which is just try little things in very pinpointed areas, and you'll get outsized value a lot of times.
Okay, let's do our final piece here. I know that we're coming up on time, and we want to just understand right to the heart of the matter. You've heard a great business case analysis from our experts on the advantages of an AI-driven training management system. Where are you in your current technological environment for managing training? Okay, let's take a look.
Wow, I'm impressed actually. I was expecting some people to be in the C category. So kudos to the participants on the call. That's really awesome. Um, I think integration is the more tools you add, it exponentially increases the complexity of integrations and automations and making decisions with the data. So that's, I think, where a lot of people are right now. But man, applause for the people whose systems are integrated and support data-driven decision making. I love that.
Yeah, I'm asking everyone in the chat too. Let us know what tools you've integrated to try to address this. It'd be interesting for our panelists to know that. As we're working through that, I'm going to ask John and John our last question, and of course we can take a few more questions before we wrap today. But John and John, you've kind of laid out a really interesting journey through a lot of different rungs of the ladder that we need to climb. If you had to leave the audience with that very first step or that important thing that they need to think about more than anything else to get this all moving in the right direction, what would that one thing be?
Well, I can start. I think if you're just looking to find a way to take the first step, don't try to boil the ocean. Find that one corner of your learning and development, organization that's kind of hurting the most, and maybe has the simplest data set and the most straightforward use case, and start to put together, a clean data set for that, and then just start with, like I said, kind of those binary decisions up front to say, are we doing this or this with this data, and then check that against human outputs and see how you do, and then that'll give you the confidence to say, oh, we can do this. We did this over here. Let's kind of expand this use case out to include these other areas, and you kind of build on it from there. I think it's much harder if you say we're going to draw a line in the sand, and from this point forward, everything's going to be perfect.
Yeah, I agree. Starting small is always important. I think too, like life is complicated, and you try to find a tool set that can get you a decent amount of the way there, and try to find a partner that can help you on that journey. We love to partner with our customers, and we kind of view ourselves as being part of their teams. And so, but that's because we're learning just as much about where we need to improve and so forth. It's funny because John was saying earlier, like, with Automator and some of these new tools that we have, you can automate the things that you hate. And it's like you can also automate the parts of our product that you hate. And that happens quite a bit. It's like, I hate how this works. And it's like, well, okay, but I built an automation to get around it. And we're like, oh, okay, well, I guess we don't have to put that on our roadmap just yet. So finding that flexibility in a partner that in a system that won't make you a prisoner, software as a service prisoner, I think is really important as well.
I love both of that. And just to kind of supplement, to reinforce what you brought up together, is it's a collaborative effort with the team, all working together as one team to kind of figure this out and not feeling like it's isolated or fragmented or siloed approach to it. Super important. I think both of you stressed that the L&D team's all in it together, trying to figure this out and make it work right. I want to thank both of you for joining, and I'm going to turn it over to Ivy in order to wrap up today.
Thank you, Michael. I'm thrilled to share that Eileen Dixon has won a complimentary Excellence in Action program submission. Congratulations, Eileen. We'll be reaching out shortly with more details.
Okay, John and John, we could talk about this for the longest period of time. Your wealth of information, great insights, practical use cases. Want to thank you both. And please reach out to Administrate and really be able to share some of these great information that was being shared in the chat. They can really help you to answer the questions and get you moving in the right direction. And again, I'm Michael Rochelle. Thank you for joining today, and look forward to hearing what your journeys are as you work through this. Have a great day.